Hello and welcome back to the Movie Memo Recaps. Today we are going to recap a 2022 movie titled The Contractor. Please be advised that there might be spoilers ahead. In the opening scene, we are introduced to James Harper, a member of the Army's Special Military Forces. James lives peacefully with his wife, Brienne Harper, and their 8-year-old son, whom he adores. James has just recovered and mended a major knee injury sustained while fighting in Afghanistan. Military commanders summoned James a few days later, only to inform him that they have honorably discharged him for medical reasons. Moreover, he won't receive any severance compensation because he has already received all the necessary medical treatment. Although James found it difficult to leave the military, he couldn't do anything to preserve his position. After returning home, James informed his wife that he had lost his job and had received no severance compensation. James appeared puzzled, as he lacked sufficient savings to sustain them for the upcoming months, despite having numerous bills to settle. However, Brienne tries to calm him down, promising him that everything would be alright and that they will work together to find a solution. That night, when James was rebuilding the house's roof, Brienne informed him that his best buddy, Mason, had died as a result of suicide. Mason, the best friend of James in the military unit, had also faced layoffs a few months prior. Brienne felt concerned and feared that James might do the same, but he held her and assured her that he would never abandon his own family, especially in such tough times. The next day, when James went to Mason's funeral, a man named Mike approached him. Mike, who was James's former superior in the Special Forces military organization, departed the service following his firing for similar reasons. However, their friendship remains positive, so Mike asks James to visit his family. Furthermore, Mike had moved to a new place, and they hadn't seen each other in quite some time. In the evening, James arrived at Mike's place to accept a dinner invitation while swapping anecdotes about their individual lives. After supper, Mike and James talked while watching a football game. During the conversation, Mike mentioned that he works for a private company that pays better. Upon hearing this, James pleaded with Mike for help in obtaining authorization to join him in the company, as he had yet to secure a new position. Furthermore, he was recently advised that he needed to pay bills and other home expenses immediately. The following day, Mike brought James along to meet Rusty, the boss of the organization where he worked. Before recruiting James, Rusty informed him that the majority of the missions for this position were extremely dangerous and risky. With his current financial situation, James had no choice but to accept the position and its associated dangers. According to the conversation between Rusty and James, Rusty was a military member like James before deciding to quit and start his own firm. He also mentioned that the government granted permission and direct assistance for all his company's missions, ensuring James didn't have to worry about detention while carrying out the operation. After James formally joined, Rusty assigned him his first mission: go to Berlin for a few weeks to spy on someone. After arriving home, James informed Brienne that he had found a new job that paid well, but it required him to travel abroad for roughly 2 weeks, which she had to agree to. The following day, James took a flight to Berlin and settled into a hotel that Mike had secured for him. A few hours after arriving at the hotel, a woman named Katia entered James's room and identified herself as one of Rusty's agents. She instructs James to spy on a biological scientist named Salim, who is known to have worked with terrorist organizations to develop biological weapons. After preparing all of the necessary equipment, James quickly embarked on his first expedition. He keeps track of all of Salim's actions at home and in the laboratory, where he conducts research. After tracing Salim's activities and gathering all of the necessary information for several days, James received a message from Katia to travel to the base. After arriving at the base, James met with Mike, Katia, and another colleague named Bobby. Mike adds that Salim is developing a highly destructive biological weapon for sale to large terrorist organizations. Their aim is to murder Salim and take all of his biological weapon research data from the lab. However, the laboratory had a security system linked to a local police station, so they needed to be cautious. Should Berlin police apprehend them, they could escape through the forest and river tunnels. That night, they prepared all of the necessary supplies and weaponry before going for their goal together. In order to enter the lab, James and his squad sneaked up on the guards and knocked them down one by one. After searching the rooms, they discovered Salem and promptly threatened him to hand over all of his research data. Mike then gives Bobby the order to move all the data to their computer, and assigns James the mission of killing Salem. Hearing this, Salem begged James not to kill him because he was a scientist working to save the lives of millions of people through his studies. He also asked James to assist in securing a copy of his study data in a bank vault that only his wife could access. However, James, who did not believe Salem's words, instantly executed him with a deadly chemical injection. After confirming Salem's death, James set fire to the laboratory and made it appear as if he died in an accident. But as they were about to leave the lab, 2 police cars surrounded them, forcing a gunfight between the cops and the mercenaries. Sadly, the shootout claimed the lives of Katya and Bobby, while Mike sustained a bullet wound to his leg. Knowing that the situation was deteriorating, James quickly dragged Mike to the forest, where they could hide in the river tunnel. After a few minutes of diving, Mike and James took a break in a safe spot for James to treat Mike's gunshot wound. He even had to perform a blood transfusion right away because Mike had lost so much blood and was in such bad condition. After Mike recovered, they planned to return to base right away, but James' knee injury recurred, rendering him unable to stand. He instructed Mike to go ahead and hand over the research data to Rusty, and he would return once his leg had recovered. Mike had no choice but to leave James and go to Rusty first to hand over the data. Before leaving, Mike instructed James to go to a hotel named Salvina and wait there until he returned to pick him up. A few hours later, after his knee had recovered, James headed to Salvina Hotel as Mike had instructed. James discovered a passport that Mike had provided ahead of time, as well as a message indicating that he would arrive in 6 hours. But after a long wait, Mike still hadn't arrived, and James sensed something was amiss, so he decided to leave the hotel. When James called Rusty to find out where Mike is, he learned that the police had leaked their mission and are actively searching for them. He stated that Mike never returned to submit the research data, therefore, he believed Mike died along the way. Rusty then instructed James to give him his location so that he could send some agents to pick him up. However, upon observing the agents Rusty has dispatched, James experienced a profound sense of unease and declined to accompany Rusty's men, as he believed Rusty is the one responsible for Mike's death. His assumption proved right. Rusty angrily ordered his men to apprehend and kill James shortly after he fled the scene. After hearing multiple gunshots, James fled to escape Rusty's men. After a heated chase, he escaped beneath the bridge aisle and defeated 2 of Rusty's guys. Before the man died, James had time to ask who sent them, and he discovered that Rusty had dispatched them to kill him upon pickup. James then sent a short message to Rusty via the man's cell phone, leading Rusty to believe he had died. After a long and grueling voyage, James sat in the underground station, contemplating his next move. At that point, he calmly remembered Salim's words, a copy of the research material he had hidden in the bank vault. The next day, James arrived at Salem's house and asked his wife to take a copy of the research data from the bank. Salem's wife initially resisted James's demands, but when he threatened to harm her son, she had no choice but to follow his orders. They went to get the data from the bank vault, and Salem's wife handed it to James. After receiving the material, James immediately proceeded to see what research Salem had done. After reviewing the evidence, he was shocked that Salem was only a regular scientist. He was designing a vaccine formulation to combat a deadly virus that was sweeping the globe. He aimed to provide the vaccine for free to anyone in need, but some groups intend to steal the vaccine formulation from him in order to enrich themselves and benefit personally. Realizing this, James decided to use the passport Mike had previously provided to return to America. After arriving in America, James rushed to Mike's house to inform Mike's widow that her husband had died. But shockingly, Mike was still alive, leading James to suspect that he collaborated with Rusty to kill him. The next morning, James surreptitiously follows Mike from behind to discover his true intentions. But Mike obviously recognized this, and he swiftly ambushed the folk who had been following him all day. Mike looked astonished when he realized it was James, because he had learned from Rusty that James had died on a previous mission. This is why Mike did not pick him up from the hotel as promised and traveled to America alone. He had no intention of betraying James, implying that Rusty had played them both. Conversely, James comes dangerously close to killing Mike, who has deceived him about the primary objective of this expedition and Salem's research. Mike then warns James not to return home because if Rusty discovers he is alive, his family will be in danger. Hearing this, James was determined to kill Rusty and his men because it was the only way to end the situation. Mike, who feels horrible about James, plans to assist him in raiding Rusty's apartment. That evening, Mike pretends to want to meet Rusty, while James sneaks into his house through the back door. James and Mike began shooting all of Rusty's men one by one, resulting in a heated shootout. Once they had eliminated all of Rusty's men, Mike and Rusty continued to shoot each other, getting severe injuries. After that, James approached Rusty, who was already dying, and shot him in the skull without saying a word. After they finished their plan, James hastened to get Mike to the hospital and save him, but he died on the way due to serious injuries. The following day, James burned Mike in his car to clear the route before returning to his home to see his family. After reuniting with his family, James decides to leave America with his wife and children to start a new life. Thanks for watching. If you are new, don't forget to subscribe for more of these recaps. Until next time, have a nice day.